Hello, everybody. Welcome to the EMUG meeting for November 15th. Welcome, welcome. There should be a panel that has handouts. Those are the PDFs of the presentations that will be going on today. If there are adjustments to the PDFs, we'll get those out in the minutes, but everybody was nice enough to get me their information beforehand, so those should be available for you, and you can take your notes on those PDFs. At the end of the meeting, and I think an email will go out tomorrow for all attendees, that does have a survey. So if you would please fill that out. We use that to know if we're doing the right things. Also on there is a question for what would you like to see? How can we improve? So please fill those out because that helps us direct the future meetings. And with that, I will turn it over. Calvin, you're already presenter. So I'll turn it over to you for new business, and I'll go ahead and mute myself.
Sounds great. Good morning, everybody. I'll kind of zoom in here on the agenda so everyone can see. This is our final meeting for 2024. We did turn around and have our in-person user group meeting back in September this year, and we ended up having the following dates voted on for meeting dates for next year. So if you want to go ahead and update your calendars, I think Fred will also put this up on the web portal so that people know. It'll also be put up on the EUG and the Epi Users Help portal.
Already up there.
February 21st. Oh, wow. Awesome. April 17th. July 18th, September 12th, November 14th will be the final one. And like before, the 3 meetings will be virtual for the year and 2 will be in person here in the Chicagoland area. For our meeting today, we have a wide array of presenters coming in. Hey, I'm doing it and Fred's doing it. But in between that, we have Ova Tangberg coming in from Roima. We have Priyanka Dubasi, who's going to be doing Kinetic. Rick Bloomberg, Pat Winter, Ron Rowling, and Josh Ney are going to sit on our cloud discussion panel. And I didn't put myself in twice, but we had a presenter that had a death in the family. So luckily they told me on Tuesday. I didn't have to write this last night at the last minute. So I'll be doing the Mastering MES in a substitute position. So hopefully I do well. It didn't give me a lot of time to do it. As Fred said, surveys and presentation ideas, if you can go ahead and send those in. I may look at the ideas portal too to see the ones that have the biggest issues. And maybe for the next meetings, we'll send that out as, hey, are you also joining this topic? Is this a topic you have of interest? Epicor accidentally announced the sunsetting of Classic UX. That email was not supposed to go out before the official notice did. So that went out. Everybody's like, we have until May of 26. I'm going to be doing some discussions with my Kinetic tips and tricks that say, I'm voting for 27, maybe 28. There are some things that just don't work in Kinetic yet. And these are core functionalities that need to be in the application. It's not just the tool set, which is where Epicor's had the biggest Kinetic difficulty converting the final tool screens over to Kinetic. There's some basic functionality also that's missing that just doesn't work, that's stopping people from using Kinetic throughout the entire ERP site. If you have a chance, go ahead and update your subscription settings. Ensure that you're getting invitations. I mean, I know I treat Fred as spam. I'm sure Hannah does the same thing. But hey, we should turn around and mark, yes, I want to receive that email. I'm running a little bit early, so we have a moment for break. Does anybody have any questions or comments regarding the new business and next year's plans?
If you've got questions, everybody's muted so that we can keep down the background noise. You can just type them into the questions or chat window, and that goes as well for during presentations. That way we can grab the questions, we'll announce them, and get answers.
And same thing, if you have a question during the meeting or you want to dive deeper into a topic, you can also submit the question or the chat, and I'll pull those offline during the meeting and put that into the Stump the Chump session for this afternoon, our closing session.
So if anybody's got any general questions, happy to take them now. Austin Miner, is the May 26th timeline also for when Kinetic goes completely browser-based?
Yes.
Austin, it doesn't mean the smart client goes away. It means
It's
that,
just,
yes, they
yeah.
will be using the browser screens. From Mazen Asmar, we are currently on 23.1. Should we upgrade to 23.2 or higher before beginning to migrate our classic customizations?
You can start right now. You don't have to wait. If they're simple, I realize in 23.1, not all of App Studio was super usable, but just adding fields to the screen, doing little snippets of code, writing simple functions, those were available there. So you can actually start that right now and then continue it. So this isn't one lump sum big project at the end. Do it in every version as you're moving forward. Doesn't mean you have to roll it out to the users, just means you have to have it up and working so that when you migrate your database, it goes right along with you.
And it might help, depending on your situation. You don't have to migrate Kinetic all at once either. So you don't have to go company wide, everybody switch to Kinetic screens. You can do it department by department. So you could roll out for example, the sales screens, or you could roll out the finance screens. You might want to roll it out to the people who are willing to change easiest, shall we say, because then they'll become advocates for going further. So if you can get a small group started, get them happy with where things are going, and if they can help you test, how do I migrate things? What are the problems that we run into so that you get that nailed out before you start spreading it out in the company? You'll probably see a lot more happy people when you do move. That way it'll go smoother for your entire company.
The target release date for 24.2, I know the early adopters are already out there. Do we have a date? Have you heard
It
anything, Hannah? Because I
got
think
released.
you're an early adopter.
It got released yesterday on-prem.
Anyone using Crystal reports, and what's the status of Epicor support for Crystal? The writing's been on the wall since version 9 when SAP bought Crystal reports that they didn't like Epicor reusing their product. But we're still supporting, you still have maintenance, they're keeping the relationship going. I would recommend getting your reports out of Crystal just because having one reporting tool is much easier than having Crystal reports, Report Builder and SSRS, having Bartender, then having other reporting tools. They're Power BI. The more tools you put in the mix, the more difficult it is for your IT department to maintain all these things moving forward. If you can simplify it, it's just going to help you in the long run.
Question from Adam. In preparation for Kinetic rollout, what is your recommendation to keep logic separate from the classic form when I need to do a customization? I want to do as little rebuilding as possible. Adam, you can definitely make use of functions even with your classic screens. So like doing button clicks, things like that, put them into your functions and have those button clicks call the functions. And then when you go to Kinetic, just be doing the same thing. You just wire in the button click to the Kinetic. So if you think about things that way or doing them with BPMs, then they're just going to move forward. You won't even have to convert anything because the BPMs will work regardless. Hannah, do you have other insights?
Exactly what I was going to say. Functions are your friend.
If you're not aware, functions are usable not only in your customizations, but also in your BPMs and also in your other functions. I am a huge advocate of write things once. If you wrote it twice, you wrote it one time too many. So if you do something similar on a screen and then need that same functionality in a BPM, then put it into a function, use it in both spots. It'll save you a lot of time.
As I always say, Fred, there's only 3 lines of code that have ever been written in the IT world, and everyone just copies and pastes them where they want them.
And Kelvin, did you hit anyone still using Crystal reports?
Yes.
Okay.
And Mike and everybody on here, if this is still an issue for a lot of people, let me know in the suggestions or on your survey. There was a training session that we did, which was converting Crystal reports to SSRS reports and what were the basic steps of moving your reports over. This was using full ODBC SQL reports that people built in Crystal that went to either the ODBC of Progress 9 or the old SQL. If needed, we can rerun that session. It's been a few years since we did that training.
And from Donovan, I'm actually going to throw this one over to Hannah or Priyanka. Can you share some examples of useful functions? What are things that you've commonly run into? I was going to say any data validation.
Data validation. Yeah. I've got a utilities library that does simple stuff like splitting strings, but like, man, most of my functions are a little more involved, like processing data sets or like creating things.
Priyanka, have you run into some common requests?
One of them is, like you said, data validations. The other one that I typically that I've used it a lot was during MES scanning, like when I have to write code for that splitting of that string and all that things. That's when I've used functions the most.
The other thing you can do, Donovan, is you'll find as you build your functions, you'll see, oh, hey, I need this somewhere else. So even though you've got a function that might be doing 10 things, let's say, you might come back later and go, ooh, I need this little chunk somewhere else. Pull that out and make that a separate function. For example, like the data validation, not that you would rate this, but let's say you were doing email validation. So you wanted to make sure it was the right pattern or a valid email format. You might need that in multiple spots throughout your Epicor customizations. You could pull that out into a common library that then your other functions could then use. Same with the splitting strings. Like Hannah was saying, she's got like a utilities library that she uses for that. So just kind of keep an eye as you develop them. Don't be afraid to come back and go, ooh, I need this little spot somewhere else too. Rip it out and reuse it. Reuse is good. Fix it once, fix it everywhere.
I use functions a lot for like looping through data sets because Application Studio's data view condition widget's absolute garbage. It's just easier to send it to a function and do it there with a for each and then send the data back.
One other example that I just like recently came across was I was in a BPM. I think it was RMA, something to do with RMA, and then I wanted to call the RMA disposition business object, and it wasn't allowing me to in the BPM itself. So I just called a function, wrote my whole code in that, and just called my function in the BPM. Yeah, so there are a lot of spots that we can use functions, and it's like really helpful.
Hannah, could you clarify your comment on what you mean about your last comment?
I find looping through data sets a little easier using C# code in a function than I do trying to wire up the widgets in App Studio. They've got something that loops through a data set called the data view condition, I think it's called. And it's clunky and it's slow and it's just, I don't know, overall it's not great. I'd rather send it to a function and do it there.
We're going to start with Roima, Uwe Tengberg from Roima's presenting.